Welcome to Legacy Radio Theater. I'm here with Darby Kern, writer and director for the Titanic Waif.
Right.
Darby Kern is an award-winning filmmaker and the writer of hundreds of radio dramas, including Left Behind, The Kids, Left Behind, The Rising, Kids Corner, Back to God, Lamplighter Theater, and Heirloom Audio's The Extraordinary Adventures of G.A. Henty.
Hmm.
Darby, thanks for joining us.
Hey, happy to be here.
Absolutely. So obviously you're very involved and plugged into the audio drama community. How did you first get interested in audio dramas?
Oh boy, that's going to go back a few years.
We have time.
When when I was a kid, you never tell me that you had time. When I was a kid, my dad got me interested in what we would have called old time radio in those days, and he started buying me audio cassettes. If anybody remembers audio cassettes of old time radio shows, Gangbusters and Sherlock Holmes were two of the big ones. And then some of the comedies, Fib McGee and Molly and Abbott and Costello and Jack Benny, all that great stuff. And I just started listening to it and I loved it. And then in the 1980s on National Public Radio, they started airing The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the Star Wars audio drama. That was huge. The Goon Show from England, BBC, a comedy that was just completely surreal and hilarious. And I just started enjoying this stuff. And I started realizing that people use their voice like another muscle, like another, just another part of their toolbox for acting. And I just fell in love with it. And in the mid 90s, I got involved with Left Behind. I contacted Todd Bastide at Gap Digital, and after bugging him for a couple of years, he brought me in to do some writing for him.
Well, we are on the same wavelength about this because I remember my first exposure to audio drama was the old time radio production of the Campbell Soup production of A Christmas Carol with Lionel Barrymore.
Sure,
and
yeah.
every Christmas we'd find that on the radio. And I had no idea. I was just, very small at this point. I had no idea that there was this entire world of this. I thought, oh, this is a neat thing I like to hear with Dad on Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And as I got a little older, I suddenly realized that there were thousands and thousands of these out there. Jack Benny and instead of a lot of the ones that you mentioned,
Yeah.
I got involved with. And then, because when I grew up, we did not have television.
Oh, okay.
And in the home. And so when I was introduced to these audio dramas, it was just like my mind kind of exploded because now this theater of the mind was so powerful to me. And then in the 80s with Adventures in Odyssey came along, I was a huge fan of that and a rabid fan. But anyway, the point is, I totally get where you're coming from. And I guess it leads into the next question, which is, what do you think is special about audio drama as opposed to, say, other forms of entertainment?
Well, I think you nailed it when you said when you called it the theater of the mind, and I don't remember who first called it that, but it's perfect because you can get somebody like me who, as I always say, has a face for radio. You don't have to look at me, but I can play a character who is so not me. A young sailor on the Titanic. Just a guy who's strong enough to wind the boat down. That's not me. In the Woody Allen movie Radio Days, where they really celebrate the old time radio, Wallace Shawn, who plays the Sicilian in The Princess Bride, that's what everyone remembers him for. But in this movie, he's an old time radio actor who plays the Masked Avenger. Beware evildoers everywhere. And you don't question radio. And you create your own images, your own pictures of what you're seeing. The classic example is The Shadow, who actually started out in pulp magazines as a character. And then, and he always had this black slouch hat and a black cloak. And he would, if he was walking down the street, you'd say, hey, there's The Shadow walking down the street. But in the old time radio shows, he was always invisible, which was a great idea. Because you couldn't do the books the way they were written because they were awfully violent too. But you could have this character who was invisible and mercurial, and it worked. It just worked fantastic.
Oh, the shadows! Like I can hear the theme right now. Oh, it's It's so nostalgic, and it's funny.
Yeah.
It's like I think the writer you mentioned the pulp magazines. I can't remember the guy's name who was writing the shadow for the pulp magazine. But he actually set a world record for words
Yeah.
written with the
Yeah.
shadow stories. It's just
Walter B. Gibson.
yes, thank you.
He would
Yes,
write a book in 5 days on an old
insane.
Corona.
Right? Exactly.
Oh,
Well, bring it up.
words a year.
It's
Incredible.
insane, insane. But talking about writing, and again, as we mentioned in the intro, you've done a lot of writing for audio dramas. What do you think is different, and other mediums, I'm sure. What is different writing for audio than, say, short stories, books, that kind of
Oh,
thing?
you, you have to. There's one thing that's similar, and that's that you have to create a complete picture.
Hmm.
When you're writing an audio drama script, you have to do it within the dialogue or within the sound effects. And in the old days, um, even I should say, even some of the new days with some of the shows, you'll have a narrator that's explaining a lot of things to you. We do that a lot with G.A. Henty,
Hmm.
and part of that is because two things. Henty's books are pretty descriptive to begin with, so that's cool. But we also have Brian Blessed, a tremendous actor with a beautiful voice, to narrate it. So why wouldn't you use a guy like that?
Right.
Um, I typically prefer not to have a narrator in most of my original stuff. I would not have a narrator, um, because I want to trust the audience as much as I can. And I don't want to write down to them. I
Hmm.
want to feed them and let them create their own kind of picture. And the way you do that is have your characters reacting to what's going on around them. Obviously, you can't hold up a picture of, in this case, the Titanic sinking,
Right.
where the ship is getting further and further, down at the bow. But you do that with your actors in their voice and then in their dialogue,
Hmm.
and it's a fine line because the classic example is the BBC did a kind of a spoof on how some of the writing was going. I think this was in the 1970s, and it's called "This Gun I Have in My Left Hand Is Loaded." And when I started working with Todd Bastide at Gap Digital on the Left Behind stuff, he would always say, okay, don't just be very careful not to do, this gun I have in my left hand is loaded, and he's right, and so
It's so true. His, oh no, he has a gun. He is going to shoot me.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
there's this going back to old time radio's story about somebody who did that. Oh no, he's going to shoot us, and then the sound guy tried to shoot the gun, and it misfired or jammed, and so the actor tried to think quickly. Actually, I'll stab you instead. And then the
Nice.
gun went off at that point. He's like, live radio. What are you going to do?
Yeah, there had to have been hundreds of examples like
Oh
that.
yeah,
You know, with,
absolutely.
with all the sound design that Orson Welles did on his shows, I can't imagine that everything went exactly as planned all the
Oh
time.
no.
But
Well, late,
for the fun of it too.
yeah, Les Miserables they were doing and live, and the guy they had to get the caverns in Paris. They put a mic down in the old NBC, I believe it was, bathrooms, which were leaky. Well, they were live on there, and some guy went down to take a leak.
Yeah, that's really
We're
easy.
on the air. What are you doing?
I have that somewhere. I'm gonna have to listen for that. So that's a good drama too.
Well, and that brings us to the real topic at hand, which
Yes.
is your script for the Titanic Waif. I guess
Mm.
one question people might have right off the bat is, what is a waif?
A waif is usually it's a destitute child or a child who is living on the streets, uh, with no means of income or support or anything like that.
Hmm.
Um, it's this kind of a stray child in a way.
Yeah. How does the title relate to the story?
Well, it was a name given to two young boys who survived the Titanic disaster. It was one of the newspapers that gave them that title, probably one of the
Oh, okay.
newspapers in New York, when everything was, yellow journalism and
Right.
sensationalism and stuff. But there were these two kids who survived and didn't have their parents with them. They didn't speak English, and they're very young. They were only maybe 4 and 2, and they weren't real good at communicating their names, where they're from, who their father was, or anything. But there's even more to that story too, because the father was lying about his name anyway. So, so.
What a terrifying experience. Because you met like 4 years old, don't know the language, just come through this harrowing experience, and then you're in a foreign country.
Yeah.
I can't even, wow, it's incredible. Well, when did you first become interested in that Titanic story in general? And then, of course, the Navratil story in particular, which is the main character in Titanic Waif.
Right. With the Titanic, I was quite young. I was probably not 10 years old yet. And in the church that I went to, there were a rack with the gospel tracts in them. And one of them was the Titanic. And the Titanic was even in the 70s, was one of those things that you knew what it was culturally. You may not have known the details, and certainly none of us did know the details in those days. But for some reason, I was attracted to it, and I read this thing, and I thought it was kind of interesting. And but it made me want to go back and learn more about the Titanic. And I spent a lot of time in libraries and our school library and other places looking for books about it. And at that time, there were a few books, but there weren't as many as there are now, for sure. And Walter Lord's A Night to Remember was the big one,
right?
And the Navratil's got a mention in there, as I recall. But it wasn't until into the 1990s I bought a book. I have it right here. Her Name Titanic by Dr. Charles Pellegrino. And this book really, really humanized a lot of what happened. I mean, before then it was just a ship sank, a bunch of people died. But this one really, it goes into the character and the story of these people in a way that A Night to Remember didn't go quite as far. But I read this book. I remember I started reading it on a plane over to Europe. And while I was there, I think I read the book 3 times. It just grabbed me. Wow. And I also, as I was reading it, I thought, wow, this would make a good movie, actually. And then when James Cameron made his movie, it was very clear to me that he'd read this book too, and that he'd gotten some ideas from it. So I thought, okay, I don't have to do that again. But Dr. Pellegrino wrote another book called Ghosts of the Titanic, and I read that, and that's when I first read the story, and it's only a couple pages in the book of the Navratils, and this secret that we create in the audio drama. It's the first place I read about that, and I thought, oh, that's really interesting and very heartbreaking too.
Yeah. And
then my wife and I went to Florida, and we were in Orlando. We went to the Titanic exhibit, the Titanic Experience, I think it was called. Oh, the exhibition. I still have my ticket for it. And it's funny because this ticket is really what propelled me forward. Because if you look at it, it puts the name of a Titanic passenger on it. And that's kind of who you are while you're there.
Oh, wow.
Master Michel M. Navratil. Well, I looked at that and I'd read the book, and I thought, okay, that's not right, because he wasn't traveling under that name. That's his real name.
Right.
And I thought, okay, it's kind of interesting, but okay, they're wrong. And I felt very good about myself for a minute. But I'll take those opportunities when I can.
Right.
But that night we went to dinner with a friend of mine, and she asked how I liked the museum, the exhibition, and I said, well, it was good, but gave me the wrong name here and all that. And she made me tell her the story of the Navratils. And I found, as I was telling it, I got really kind of emotional about it. And she's one of those friends who knows I want to make movies, knows I like writing stuff. And she says, there you go. There's your movie right there. Make a movie of that. And I said, well, nobody's ever going to be able to make a good movie about the Titanic again. So I won't do that. But it got the juices flowing. And then I decided to write it as an audio drama. I thought that the BBC would actually be interested in something like this. So that's what I wrote it for originally.
Right.
And then I found out that the BBC doesn't take submissions from people who don't live in the United Kingdom. So
very UKist of them.
yeah, well, what they said, and they were very polite about it. They said that they are trying to build relationships with writers that can continue for a long time, and I get it. But I wasn't going to move to England, much as I like it. Right. I wanted to. I mean, I didn't want to tell a story about a ship sinking. It's a family story, you know.
It's very human.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the goal. I think that is what makes, because a lot of ships have sunk, right? Mm-hmm. But there is something about the Titanic that makes it special. I think part of that is all of the human stories that have come out about it that makes it personal. And to me, that's one of the keys, to writing. And I don't need to tell you this, is it's not about necessarily what happens, but who it happens to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and humanizing that is so key. So the story, I think, will absolutely grab people. And I guess I'm wondering, as the director, as the writer, what you are hoping that people will take from this story. Like when they're done listening, when this is all produced and out there, what do you want people to take away from that story?
I really what I would like them to take away is the importance of communicating clearly, and just love your family. The family unit is so important, and in popular fiction, it's degraded in so many ways. Television, movies, books, all that stuff. The family unit is looked down on, the nuclear family unit, and here's a case of it failing in a spectacular way, but really for want of a few words that could have been spoken that one or two people or three people were maybe just too proud to say, and it became a tragedy for them.
Right.
And it's a true story too, so it's heartbreaking.
I mean, that is so key. You mentioned the family unit and its place in current popular culture, and how it's just mocked and made fun of for reasons I don't understand. And it's presented as the breakup of the family unit is celebrated somehow. But you're so right. In this story, the family unit does break up, but it leads to tragedy.
Yeah, nothing good comes from it.
No, absolutely.
Or any. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but yeah,
you have to listen, folks, to find out.
Exactly. I mean, it's the tragedy continues beyond the sinking of the ship, and it's a story that really resonates, I think, and it resonated with me, and that's why I wanted to do it. So, and I'm very grateful that you were interested in producing this script. It's meant a lot to me over the years, and we've had many false starts with it. So,
well, could talk about sometime about how that came to be. But when I first read it, it just grabbed me. And of course, I've loved the Titanic as well, and not as knowledgeable about it as you are, but it's such a gripping story, and I think there's just something about it that I will absolutely grab people, absolutely. And there's something, how it all this came together to being produced is a story in itself. But as a director, tell me what it's like to direct people of the caliber that we have in this show, because we've got some great names in here. What's that like for you to direct people like John Fornoff and Rich Swingle?
Yeah, first of all, it's a lot of fun, and secondly, I would say it's not work. It's not work. You get people like that. You always hear someone say, "Well, once casting is done, most of your work is done," and sometimes that is so true. I mean, we had John was terrific in it. He plays a character that a true person, Second Officer Lightoller, Charles Lightoller, who survived the Titanic, which is an amazing story by itself, but really one of the more heroic persons, I think, that night. And even though he made some mistakes, but uh, he's just terrific. We talked a little bit about the character beforehand, but I didn't have to, you know, I didn't have to talk him into who his character was going to be. He knew who it was. Rich is another one. Very little, given to him, and he did his research. He plays First Officer Murdoch, and he hears, oh, Murdoch, that's Scottish. I get to throw a little Scotsman in here. And he did, and I don't know what Murdoch sounded like.
Yeah.
He didn't survive, unfortunately. But Rich threw it in there because he thought it was an appropriate character choice. And I thought, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. And Katie Lee is in it too. Fantastic Katie Lee, who has been on Adventures in Odyssey now for 34 years, and she hasn't grown a day in all that time. Connie is still a kid, and she's got Katie herself has such a youthful character, and here she's playing not elderly, but an older French woman, a mother who is, I don't know how to describe. She's a mama bear for sure, and she's a character that you've never heard Katie play before, I don't think, and it's exciting. It's exciting, And she just, very little had to be said to her either. It's almost like winding the string up and then letting them go, and they're so good.
And what struck me when I was in these sessions with all you guys, didn't know why I was there necessarily, but I was honored to be there. And the questions
You're
that
a huge
they asked, well, the questions they asked, were so indicative of their expertise.
Yeah.
Like, what about this? What about that? What about, and it was just, and that scene watching Rich and John together was just magical.
Yeah.
I've watched that back, the recording of that back, and I think there's a video clip of it now. It's just the two veterans, it was great to see.
And John is not, he's only really started acting as much as he has really in the last couple of years. I mean, he's primarily a writer and a director.
Yeah.
And he's just a terrific actor, and I'm so glad that he has started acting, and I'm so glad that he is in this show, because he's just wonderful.
I mean, he has clearly taken to heart everything that he's seen and directed over the years, and learned, and now it's, I'm so happy to have him. But as a director, whether you're working with pros or not pros, or newbies to the field, maybe, how do you know how far to push an actor, and how much freedom should a director give an actor for their own interpretation of the material?
Well, I think that, I always, when I write something, I hear the voice for it. I hear the voice for the character. And 99% of the time, I do not get what I hear in my head. That's just the way it is. You have to be willing to, as a writer director, you have to be willing to let go of some of that stuff. And that's okay, because, good actor is going to bring ideas that, you had never thought of. They're going to bring characterizations that you had never considered, because you get locked in on one thing. Well, then you hand it over to another creative person, and they bring their interpretation of it. Is that maybe that's not the right word, but they'll bring their version of it, and you just think, oh yeah, that's even better. That works. I like that. And what I do, and you were there for this too. We recorded every take, even the read through at the beginning, because sometimes you get some great stuff in there. And I said, okay, we're going to do a read through. I'll give you some notes, and then we'll do, a take, and then we'll do another take where you just do it however you would want to do it. And so you get an idea with the first take where they're starting with, and you can give them some notes. And in most cases, I didn't have to give a whole lot of notes to people, or maybe just saying, okay, on this line, stress this word. But then when it got time for me to say, okay, just give me one the way you want it, how you would do it, I've already influenced them to a certain degree through 2 takes, at least, maybe 3 takes. And how many times when I said, okay, just give me that wild take, at the end of it, I said, okay, that's the one we're using.
Yep.
and part of it is I've tried to steer them to that,
sure.
But also they they felt some freedom to be able to experiment.
Mm.
But at the same time, subliminally, I've given them some boundaries, and it's just amazing. You know what's great about that is, and as an actor, you think, oh, he's giving me the freedom to do stuff, and then maybe when your head hits the pillow at night, you think, okay, he coerced me
You
into
got
this.
me.
But 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 at the same time, we were working with such amazing actors
Oh, yeah.
that uh, you know I could have done it on a first take, and half of them would have just nailed it right away. Amy Lilly, another example of that. She's just a
Mm.
terrific actress who brings so much that
Joy
you
to
don't
work
have
with.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to tell them what to do. You don't have to give them line readings for crying out
Right.
loud. And we didn't work with too many really new actors or actresses on that. My friend Katrina Mazier, who is she plays Bertha Lehman in the
Hmm.
show. She doesn't have as much experience, but she's on The Watch.
Hmm.
Played a character on The Watch, and she's very natural, and um,
Yeah.
she's fun to work with too. She's just a sweet person, as all these actors are. I'm finding out, but I really didn't have to give her a whole lot of uh, you know I mean, no line readings or anything like that, but I didn't have to give her a lot of direction. She came in, we talked a little bit about the character. She's a young Swiss lady. So she found her voice. I said, maybe watch Casablanca and get some Ingrid Bergman vibes.
Mm.
She did. And she came in, and in a very short period of time, she was done recording her scene and just did a terrific job. So,
I think, yeah, for things, and I thought they have things have run very smoothly and very,
oh, man,
easily ended. That's
don't get used to that.
no, no.
No,
I was surprised. I was like, it's going to be there are going to times it's going to be a slog because that's just
yeah.
the way. I'm new to audio drama in terms of producing it, but other things I've done, and yeah, you just have those times when it's just like, okay, this is actual work right now, and I don't care for it. There weren't any of those times. It
Right,
was more fun than it had any right to be.
right.
And that has I give you so much credit for that because you took care of the casting and the directing. And it occurs to me, I could be totally wrong about this, but it occurs to me that a lot of the directing happens in casting because if you get the right people,
I,
you've made your job a lot easier.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that was definitely the case with this. I can't say I called in any favors because I don't think any of these actors owed me anything.
Mm.
But I called people that I knew and people that I wanted to work with. We talk about John Fornoff as an actor, but I got to tell you, and this is going to date the script a little bit, but it was probably 16 or 17 years ago. I sent him the script as a writing sample because I
Mm.
would love to have worked on Adventures in Odyssey, and that's when he was there. And he's done other stuff since then. But he read that script and he loved it. And when it came time, when you and I got connected and decided to do this, I thought, okay, I need to call John because he was one of those cheerleaders from way back then, and when I sent him a message and asked him if he'd be willing to record a voice for it, it seemed ecstatic to do it
Mm.
because he just loved the story and he wanted to be part of it. And he's been a part of it for so many years, and now I'm so glad to have him in there. But yeah, I mean, you know, work with your friends whenever you can.
Mm.
Um, know what their limitations are, and
Right.
know that you can, completely let them go, and just they're going to do something great for you, and it's a great feeling. I mean, there was one session that we had that we scheduled for about 4 hours, and I said to my wife before I came downstairs, I said, "Well, we're going to be about 4 hours," and she kind of did really? You're going to be down there for 4 hours? And I said, "Honey, this is going to be the best 4 hours of my day."
Yeah.
And it turned out that it was. I mean, it was just
So
hearing
much
you.
fun. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And
absolutely.
they've elevated everything so far beyond what I did with it, and and you're going to do that too with the sound design. So it's this has just been a joy from beginning to end
It
so far.
really has. Yeah, I can't wait for people to hear it, and definitely, just you're going to want to hear this. Moving at breakneck speed, much faster than I anticipated, which is great. And
Yeah,
we hope to have it out by the end of the year. That's our goal.
that'd
So
be
yeah,
fantastic.
everybody stay tuned and keep listening.